A Globe Turns. United Artists presents The World in Action. Dark clouds loom over the horizon at sea. Now, The Peace, with narrative description by Audiovision. Produced at the National Film Board, Ottawa. Low drifting clouds obscure the skyline of a large city.
Once again, within our time and generation, the nations face the solemn challenge history has thrust upon them. To build, amid the parting clouds of war, a peace which shall be real and indivisible.
The clouds start away from the city. Fireworks explode in the night sky.
Still vivid in the mind of millions is that other victory that was to end all wars.
A victory march throngs the Arc de Triomphe.
Still vivid those spectacles of 27 years ago, when the men came marching home to a world made safe for democracy.
Cars drive through a crowd. Woodrow Wilson waves from one.
Still vivid, too, that figure with its mighty dream of human justice. Woodrow Wilson, prophet of the peace, whose honor spread like wildfire across tormented Europe.
A massive crowd crams the streets by Notre Dame Cathedral. Wilson is on an outdoor stage.
Wilson, who called upon the world to renounce war forever as a means of settling disputes.
He addresses the multitude.
And many there are who recall the hope that greeted the founding of the League of Nations with its great new concept of collective security against attack. For surely a new understanding had dawned when so many nations could declare, if any member of the League resorts to war, it shall be deemed to have committed an act of war against every other member.
Members gather in a large meeting room.
And they recall as well how there slowly dawned instead the bitter truth that in a world of deeds, the only weapons of the League were words.
They congratulate each other and shake hands. An exploding shell sends a cloud of black smoke over a city. A woman wails in anguish on the sidewalk nearby. Flames engulf buildings in a firestorm at night. Rows of wooden crosses line a dirt graveyard.
Once again, within our time and generation, the nations face the solemn challenge.
Names and dates are hand-painted on the crosses.
The things for which we fought, said Wilson, are certain to prevail. They may come in a better way than we propose.
An elderly woman and a man lay flowers on a dead body in the street and cross themselves. A mansion backs lush grounds.
At Dumbarton Oaks, near Washington, in August 1944, a conference took place among the four major allies of the Second World War.
4 men in suits walk past photographers and enter the building.
Purpose of their meeting was to prepare for submission to all the United Nations a tentative plan for the future maintenance of peace.
In a grand meeting room, the envoys sit behind long tables arranged in a rectangle.
And from these discussions, there has emerged a blueprint for a new international organization, based this time not only on ideals, but on the sober realities that lie ahead.
The adjudicator addresses the room. A graphic shows a world map.
The post-war world this plan envisages will be composed of separate sovereign states. Among them will be the United Nations, first members of the new organization. And among these, in turn, there will be 5 great powers, the Big Four and France.
Lit on the map are the US, Britain, Russia, China, and France.
Like the League of Nations, the new world body will have a General Assembly. But the actual task of peacekeeping will be in the hands of a smaller Security Council of which the 5 great powers will be permanent members.
At Dumbarton Oaks, the representatives listened to an Asian delegate.
For as they looked back at the past, the delegates saw good reason why those responsible for law and order should be relatively few.
Japanese cannons fire along a dirt road.
They remembered Japan's attack upon the Chinese province of Manchuria. And they remembered how Nippon's spokesman, arraigned before the full assembly of the League, well knew that too many of his listeners had other things to think of at the time.
Protesters march in London.
For in that year of 1931, hunger and depression at home loomed larger in the minds of many statesmen than troubles far away.
A rousing speaker incites a crowd. Men walk through rubble.
And when the League's observers finally arrived upon the scene, they found the damage done.
The observers survey a war-torn area. A graphic shows men at a round table.
To give the new Security Council power to deal with breaches of the peace, the planners of Dumbarton Oaks propose that it shall be free to act anywhere in the world at any time.
A world map appears on the surface of the table. The meeting continues at Dumbarton Oaks.
For they recall the fateful year of 1936, when history proved the need of taking action before the war clouds break.
Soldiers march past a host of onlookers.
For it was then that the armies of the Spanish insurgents launched their revolt against the government and swiftly turned all Spain into a battlefield.
A mob passes guns around. A woman learns to load a rifle. A black sedan enters the courtyard of a huge complex of white buildings.
And when the League of Nations gathered at Geneva to hear the government's appeal, some doubted that they had the right to intervene in what appeared to be a civil war.
Ambassadors congregate at the League of Nations Assembly.
And while the Assembly argued through the days of crisis, Spain's Foreign Minister, Alvarez del Valle, looked on in despair.
Soldiers gather in Spain.
For he knew that what was taking place on Spanish soil was of grave concern to every peaceful nation.
An explosion collapses a building.
That Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy were testing out their new techniques of lightning attack.
Civilians pull a child from smoldering debris. The round map table graphic is shown.
To ensure that the Council's power shall be instantly effective, it is planned to place at their disposal a special group of military experts, a body not unlike the Committee of the Allied Chiefs of Staff, which has so ably unified the strategy of the United States and Britain in World War II.
Military brass confer at a table.
For at Dumbarton Oaks, they recalled another grim event that showed the need for unity of purpose.
A phalanx of troops marches a wide boulevard.
They remembered the time when Mussolini's legions marched from Rome to conquer for their master a place in the sun in Ethiopia.
Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia walks gravely onto a podium before the assembled League.
And they remembered, too, the lonely figure who looked on in vain, watching the League debating drastic measures, while 3,000 miles away, the aggressor struck.
Army vehicles cross a desert plain. Foot soldiers swarm the ground. Soldiers on horseback charge across the plain. Cannon fire lights up a night sky.
And with the lessons of this war in their minds, they realize that future aggression, if it comes, will come with terrible violence and without warning.
Fire throwers incinerate a field.
And for this reason, they proposed that the foundations of tomorrow's peace shall rest upon preventive military power.
Soldiers raise the doors of a huge garage and climb in the backs of trucks. They hasten from it swiftly. A plane readies for takeoff.
Thus, in the last resort, the World Organization will be able to call upon its member nations for an agreed proportion of their own armed strength to meet the threat of force with force.
A squadron of fighter planes flies low in unison over a military base. Huge waves crash against the bow of a battleship in rough seas.
Such is the plan for the maintenance of law and order in our time. Not sketched upon a dream, but risen from the stern realities of history.
The graphic shows men around the map table protected by weapons. Lights from buildings twinkle in the New York skyline at night.
But as the lights come on again, the belief is growing that the key to lasting peace lies not alone in force, but rather in those mighty material forces that shape the daily intercourse of nations in the modern world.
The sun shines on Manhattan in winter. A coastal rock face explodes.
Everywhere it is being said that only a new vision of the earth itself and its abundance can secure the human contentment so vital to goodwill between the peoples. A vision which sees as a common heritage the natural riches on which all men depend for comfortable living.
Excavators dig at an industrial plant. Soldiers march.
Perhaps too often in the past, the nations have regarded their share of the world's abundance as their own exclusive property, have too often raised barriers against the common enjoyment of the common wealth.
Men and women work in a busy office.
But with the war has come a new outlook on the Earth's resources. For in order to equip their giant armies in the field, many of the Allied nations have pooled the greater part of all their wealth.
British and U.S. representatives meet and discuss formally. Soldiers load a cargo plane.
And they say today that only such a policy of mutual aid for mutual advantage can ensure the plenty so essential in the peace to come.
Network lines crisscross a global map.
For this reason, the new international organization will survey the world of daily work and will elect a special council to promote economic cooperation between all the peoples of the globe.
The floor of a stock exchange bustles with shouting traders.
To some, such schemes appear impractical. They claim that the machinery by which the world's goods are bought and sold is now so intricate that change would bring chaos in its wake.
Stockbrokers toil at a frenzied pace.
But already the United Nations are taking joint action in 3 great fields of reconstruction: relief and food and money.
Cranes clear debris in a war-ravaged city.
From liberated areas, reports are coming in of living standards perilously low, of hunger so acute as to endanger political stability,
A young girl stumbles through rubble.
of misery and sickness so widespread as to cause apathy and even resentment towards overtures, however friendly, from outside.
A baby resists a doctor's help. Delegates meet in a grand room.
In setting up the organization known as UNRWA, the United Nations have recognized it as a task of common world interest to bring relief to devastated lands. And there is now flowing to the ports of Europe a steady stream of food and clothes and medicine. For every nation contributing supplies to UNRWA is well aware that in tomorrow's world, there can be little prosperity for one unless there is prosperity for all.
Nurses help women dress their children. A truck passes desert huts.
Meanwhile, UNRWA is grappling with an even graver problem: the care of some 20 million people whom the tide of war has swept from hearth and home.
Refugees climb out of the truck. Men raise a tent.
And throughout the camps set up to house these men and women, there has spread, as if by magic, that forward-looking spirit which turns each canvas town into a self-governing community, preparing its citizens for the day when they will take their place in the new community of nations.
The ethnically diverse swarm gathers at the massive camp. Baled hay stands in a quiet meadow.
Turning to another field of human need, the nations are now seeking to banish forever the ravages of hunger, which can lead so easily to war.
Crowds pack a street.
Though everyone must eat to live, no one has found out till recently the actual amount of food the world must grow to keep its people in good health and spirits.
An elderly woman eats. Food is distributed at an African village.
And there are very few who have even been conscious of the terrible reality that 2/3 of the human race has always lived on the verge of starvation.
Emaciated women and children plead for food. Men sit at a long table.
Now the United Nations are setting up a special body to study the problems of adequately feeding all mankind. And from the deliberations has come one of the most striking ideas of our day.
The UN appointees confer.
Their inquiries reveal that in many fertile areas, the farmer has all along been hampered by the demands of military preparedness. Especially is this true in Europe, where each nation has tried to grow some of everything in case of war. And they are now proposing that as Europe replants its plundered fields, it should do so on a new plan, a plan which would see the entire continent and perhaps eventually the whole earth as a single food pool, each country contributing those crops which nature has best fitted it to grow.
A herd of cattle scurry across a plain.
They point out that there is no reason why so vast a plan for increasing the earth's abundance cannot be achieved in time, provided that the nations, large and small alike, have the will to do it. And they point out as well that it is perhaps the only way in which the plague of famine and all that plague implies can finally be driven from the world.
A full net teeming with fish is lifted from the water and dumped in a boat.
But experts say that such a plan could never succeed until the people's power to purchase food is everywhere increased.
Unemployed men mull about on a city sidewalk. Smoke billows from an industrial plant.
They emphasize that certain countries, especially in the New World, will soon be seeking markets for the new products of their wartime factories, that there will be big reserves of manpower for whom employment must be found.
Ruined machinery sits idle.
At the same time, other lands in Europe and in Asia will stand in dire need of machinery for reconstruction and might even be unable to secure it because they lack the ready funds to pay.
An industrial building's interior is in shambles.
At the Bretton Woods Monetary Conference, economists met from all over the world to find ways of bringing buyers and sellers together in the post-war years.
A speaker addresses a full auditorium.
Outcome of their discussions was a plan for an international bank to which each nation will contribute according to its wealth and from which each may borrow a limited amount. By this means, nations impoverished by war will be able to order what they need, knowing that a common pool of credit is behind them. Knowing, too, that their orders will help create employment in those countries now in a position to produce and sell.
A cargo ship transports containers. Women villagers do construction work.
So as the nations face the labors of the days ahead, they are seeking to share a common purpose in the peace, even as they share the common perils of the war, seeking to create for mankind everywhere that measure of material plenty without which none can live today in lasting friendship with his fellows.
Steelworkers labor high above the city. Surf pounds the bow of the ship.
Thus then we face the challenge. For the maintenance of law and order in our time, we look principally to those great powers whose military might best fits them to enforce it.
A swarm of fighter planes fill the air. Delegates sit at a conference.
But for that new spirit of joint endeavor on which true peace depends, We look to all those nations, small as well as great, within whose power it is to will the increase of the earth itself. So when this time the men come marching back, it may be to a world on the march itself, to new horizons of adventure.
The sun shines brightly on a sprawling cityscape. The End, a United Artists release, produced by the National Film Board of Canada. Enemy footage included by permission of the Alien Property Custodian, in the public interest under license number LM292.